there, and welcome to the Healing Word of the Week podcast with me, Marissa of Marissa Moments, where you might get triggered into seeing your own reflection, but it's to reconnect you to yourself and awaken the divinity within. So prepare for laughs, resonance, and accountability through true stories, channeled messages, prophetic words, and everything in between. So I hope you're ready, because guess what? Here we go. Okay, so the word this week is regulators. Regulators. And when I say it, I of course I think of regulators, mount up, right? But what God put on my heart to share with you is a lot of us out here are regulators, right? We are emotional regulators, whether we want to or not, right? Because especially when you're an empath, let's just not even use the term empath, when you are a hypersensitive spirit, individual, soul, all of those different types of things, it seems that you encounter more people that are in need of some sort of emotional, maybe even physical or spiritual regulation, right? And so what that means, that's just a fancy way of saying that they're all over the place, right? They're like, but when you come around, it kind of brings them a calm, right? So what ends up happening is that these people that don't have the capacity or even the awareness to recognize that they are emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally dysregulated or just chaotic, let's say, they're not aware of it, but when they come around you, they feel like this sense of peace, right? And sometimes, let's just be real. Can I be real? Yeah, we're going to be real. Sometimes it's because they project everything onto you. And because you're a hypersensitive being, you have the tendency to take it, right? You just take it. And Lord only knows where you put it. Some of us may just push it down, right? It's okay. It's fine. And I still have the tendency to do it. I don't do it nearly as much as I used to, but I still have those moments where I find myself getting into that script of it's okay, because that's usually the just innate response to people projecting onto me in those moments. It's okay, because they come back and they apologize. It's okay. Because the reason why I often say, and we often say it's okay, it's because we can understand where it's all coming from. We see beyond the actions, the emotions, the words, and all of those things into the root cause, right? And so when we have a tendency and when we have the capacity and capabilities of seeing the root cause, that causes our hearts to be a little bit softer, right? Because we understand that those projections aren't based off of a hatred towards us, but almost like a self-hatred instead. And a feeling of self-defeat and a feeling of just inadequacy, right? Or trauma, or whatever it is, whatever the root cause is, typically we're able to see it. And because of that, we say, it's okay. It's okay. I understand, because we do understand. And even when we say I understand, people don't even understand the depth of that understanding, right? Because society on a whole, what I've been learning over the years is the understanding that most people mention is on a surface level, right? I understand that you chose to wear that because X, Y, Z, right? But when a hypersensitive person says, I understand, it's because they've seen beyond the veil. They've gone into your spirit and your soul and almost even had a sense of the traumas that maybe you've even forgotten, right? That they've even forgotten. But anyway, we're talking about regulators, which is what you are, right? You're going to start hearing this term a lot more. I'm prophesying it right now. But the thing of it is that we have to understand that is not our lot in life, right? Because a lot of times what will happen is that we will be abused in that capacity, right? Because people will get accustomed to us coming around and regulating the things that they choose to not even acknowledge as needing to be healed, right? And that's not to say, because at the end of the day, we're all walking wounded, right? We are all operating from our wounds. And that's why it's so important to heal, right? So that way we're not consistently bleeding out onto others. When we heal, that's an acknowledgement of the fact that we don't have it all together. The fact that we are, impervious, we are, whatever, you know what I'm saying, right? The fact that we do need help, right? And whether that be going, first and foremost, always going to God, but as on an earthly plane, because sometimes we don't have the capacity to receive what God is trying to put out there for us. So then God will send helpers, right? In the form of a therapist, in the form of a good friend, but not in the form of somebody that is an emotional regulator in the sense of you spill everything out onto them and then they carry it away and it becomes their burden to carry, right? Now, of course, I'm speaking from personal experience here, and it's taken, 45 years to understand that, right? It's taken a lot of heavy life experiences to understand that. That's why people, here's the thing. Let me just get away from that real quick because it was about to spiral. That's why in certain instances, you may notice people are treating you differently. Because here's the thing, once you start pulling back yourself in terms of setting boundaries and not making yourself as available to become that emotional regulator, because you are now operating under the understanding that if you are a continuous source of regulation for that individual, then they will never seek it for themselves, right? And they will continue to dump onto you and dump onto you and dump onto you until you get to the point where you break. Right? And there's no fault or shame in you breaking. Now, there is fault I won't say shame, but there is fault in other people consistently pouring onto you and dumping onto you, right? We're not saying pouring into you because that's something different, right? We're talking about laying their burdens at your feet as if you were Jesus, right? Because a lot of people will do that. And that's what they're accustomed to, because that's what they've learned through the generations, right? And when we talk about generational curse breakers, that's a part of it, right? Because we have to get to a certain place and stage and understanding where we can no longer be the dumping ground for other people's trauma and emotional baggage. Because one, that means we're having a Jesus complex that's saying, bring it all to me, my child, bring it all to me and I shall set you free. Well, no, because what happens is that when somebody brings you their burdens, then all of a sudden you have all this baggage around you and you don't even know how to carry it. So then you try to take it to God, perhaps, or maybe you try to dump it onto somebody else. But when you try to take the problems to God, here's the thing, right? God is saying those are not your burdens to carry. Why are you taking on someone else's burdens? Now, I'm not talking about true obligations, right? I'm not talking about cooking dinner for the kids, right? Because you'd be like, man, these kids bringing their burdens to me again. Oh, Lord, they talking about mommy, daddy, what are we going to have for dinner? No, that's a true obligation, right? We're not including that. We're talking about the person that consistently, whenever you talk to them, it's only woe is me. It's only, man, I've been in pain and this is happening and that's happening. It's never, hey, guess what? Because let's just be honest. Everybody has a, hey, guess what moment in their life, if not just for a snippet. However, it just seems like maybe their whole life consists of, man, and then this, and then this, and then this, because they refuse to acknowledge the good in your presence because you are solely their dumping ground. So when you hear other people talk about them, you might hear them talk about, wow, this person is great. They're amazing. They're always smiling. They always have a good word for us. And you're like, who are they talking about? Because they're not talking about my friend. They're not talking about my relative, because the only thing that they bring to me is doom and gloom and sorrow, right? Because they're saving it up for you as being their regulator. But how do we get out of this place in space? Boundaries. Now, I know boundaries, a term, and the notion and all of these things have been overused so much. It's kind of like the term narcissist at this point, right? Or just anything else. We become just desensitized to it. And it's like, whatever. It's just another word. But we have to understand that it is important to have boundaries. It is important to put limits on what you are willing to receive. Because just as I said in the earlier illustration, people will bring their burdens onto you when in fact they need to be bringing it to God, right? And so in order for us not to have that God complex, that Jesus complex, that, oh, I can do all, just bring it to me. It's fine. It's okay. It's okay. Instead of doing all of that, we have to put up the boundaries. So maybe that way they can find their ultimate healer, the ultimate regulator. And that's in the best sense of the word. Now, I have to also explain the fact that, and whenever I'm giving these words, of course, there is a duality behind all of them. It isn't always doom and gloom. Sometimes regulators do exist in this world that have the capacity to regulate things, as God has instilled in them this gift. And like in the terms of, or the notion of being a therapist, right? Or an educator, or whatever it may be, right? They have that capacity because God has instilled it within them. However, even therapists are trained in such a way to understand that they are not the proverbial dumping grounds. They are there instead to hear you out in order to give you tools and the necessities that you need in order to resolve your own problems, right? In order to recognize that you are the walking wounded, in order to not just take the things off of your plate and then they have to carry it and put it away and do whatever with it. No, it's to serve as a reflection of the things that you have experienced in life, and to be able to help you dissect and unpack and process and do all of those things in order for you to continue to heal, or for them, however you want to view it, right? But at the end of the day, we all have something to unpack and process and heal and all of those things. But the bottom line to this bottom line is, as a regulator, we have to be hyper aware, because listen, when people identify you as being a regulator and having somewhat of a capacity to do these things, then sometimes they don't put limits on the things that they bring to your door, right? Like, for instance, I have the Give and Receive free community boutique, right? And what happens with that is that people want to just bring everything to me. So, and it's great. I mean, I'm so thankful and grateful for it. But at the same time, if I don't put some sort of limitations on it, then I'm going to become that dumping ground too, right? Because people don't necessarily pay attention when I say, hey, we don't accept shoes. So, the first thing that they do, they put shoes in the bag. Man, I got so many pair of shoes I got to get rid of. I'm saying, hey, we don't accept shoes. Yeah. Anyway, I got all these shoes. I got like 25 bags of stuff for you. And I'm just like, hey, listen, we're a boutique. We're a boutique. That means we're smaller in capacity. So although I am grateful for the opportunity to receive these things in order to, disperse them from there for free to the community, if I don't have the capacity to bring in those things, then I'm doing myself a disservice. And then I start to do the community a disservice, because now all of a sudden I'm not going to be able to pay as much attention to the way that we organize things. I'm not going to have the capacity or the energy or the space to make things actually neat. So then the main thing that I stand for, the mission that I say, okay, I want to restore grace and dignity to the process of charity and free clothing distribution, then that goes out the window, because I never set a limit. And if we don't set limits for the people who, and of course, you have to understand how I'm applying this, but if we don't set those limits, and if we don't, put the boundaries up, then people will continue to push forward. And we can't blame them, because we never set the limits. So they're just like, hey, this is what we do, y'all. This is what we doing. So all of that to say, understand and know where you are placed in different people's lives. If you often find yourself completely drained after an encounter with certain individuals, then maybe you need to reevaluate that relationship, right? Maybe you need to start putting limitations on your availability, because maybe, just maybe, you are the regulator in that relationship. And of course, there's always a give and take. Well, there should be a give and take, right? In a marriage or any type of relationship, a friendship, maybe one's up and the other one's down and vice versa, right? And in those instances, we are all regulators, but to a certain extent, right? The purpose and focus of this specific message is to understand when you are the sole regulator within that dynamic, and when you have become the emotional, mental, physical, spiritual dumping ground for someone else. So that way you can open your eyes and recognize, that rhymed, that you need to put limitations on that relationship. And the ultimate goal is to help people understand that maybe you are not the source of their soul happiness. Maybe you are not the source of their soul healing. And so sometimes what I've recognized and understood, and because here's the thing, I used to think, okay, I have to be there. I have to be there, because how are they going to function without me? I know that they don't have the capacity. Well, one, that's a part of a Jesus God complex, but two, that's taking the onus again away from them. And that means that maybe they don't get an opportunity to develop a relationship with God because you are there. Right? And what God put on my heart to share with you is sometimes people don't understand and recognize who they are and how they are until you walk away. Because now all of a sudden that the regulator is gone, the person that is their proverbial healer is gone. Now they got to look around, right? And what happens if I'm going to say a big if on that, because oftentimes these people will find an emotional, physical, mental regulator elsewhere, right? And then they'll begin to siphon from there. But that's not your cross to carry. That's not your bag, baby, right? But here's what ideally will happen in a perfect world and in certain scenarios. What will end up happening is once they recognize that nobody else is willing to carry their burdens like you did, then maybe they start turning to a different source. Maybe they start turning to an ultimate source, right? Maybe they start turning to their father. And I'm not talking about their daddy here on earth, right? I'm not talking about daddy, none of that. No, I mean, unless that's how you refer to him. But I'm talking about God, right? I'm talking about Jesus. I'm talking about the Holy Spirit. I'm talking about the whole Trinity, right? The triune God, right? But listen, I say all that to say this. Recognize who you are, how you are, and what you are accepting. Because at the same time, what God just put on my heart to share with you is that we can't always put that onus on the other person. We can't always point that finger of blame and shame to the other person when we continue to allow this to happen. When we continue to feed into this dynamic and nourish this type of relationship, right? And then if we turn around and try to dump it onto somebody else, but yet we refuse to take any action towards healing what is wounded within that relationship, then we're doing no better than the person who's dumping onto us. So there comes a certain point in time, a certain place in space where we have to recognize our wounds, and then we have to take it even further. Am I the cause? Who am I in this dynamic? How can I make this, take a step towards healing? Because you're not going to be the one to heal it, but you can take certain steps towards healing. Because here's the other thing, right? God is not capable of healing when we refuse to step away from the knife, right? When we refuse to step away from the thing that is continuously hurting us. So sometimes God will break our hearts and make us see clearly in a way that we're like, dang, God, did you have to do that? And God is like, yes, because I've been showing you subtleties and you've just been like, oh, that's cute. And then you keep going. So sometimes we do have to have that proverbial knock on the head, right? That little We have to continue to bang our heads before we recognize that maybe that ceiling is too low, or maybe we need to readjust our stance, right? So listen, I've already talked for about 20 minutes now, but hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down, because what you need to do, what you should do, what I hope you do based off of this is recognize yourself as being a regulator, right? And with the understanding that that's not a bad thing. It's not a 4-letter word. But we have to understand when we need to put up boundaries, when we need to regulate our regulations, when we need to understand under what capacity we are serving others. Because yes, service is a beautiful thing if we have the capacity. But if we recognize that we are coming away completely empty, completely drained, completely all the things, then maybe we need to start reevaluating some things. So the thing that we need to look at this week is understanding, one, am I a regulator? Regulators, let's mount up. And two, how can we put certain parameters and healthy boundaries within the dynamics of whatever relationship puts us in the position of being that regulator in order to facilitate a healthier, happier dynamic and a healthier and happier you, with the understanding that we are here to serve God, not to become Him. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for walking with me on this journey. I love to heal with transparency, because there is no such thing as perfection. We're perfectly imperfect, right? So as we learn, as we grow, as we journey, we remain open to different possibilities and different adjustments at the same time, because what I said 1 year ago, 2 years ago, whatever it is, may not apply to today, and maybe it may apply even more so to today. But we have to have the openness and the capacity for that growth and that understanding in order to continue to heal and ascend. And like I always say, the only thing better than walking this healing ascension journey is to walk it with friends. So I am so grateful for you for being here, regardless of if you're listening to this the week it was recorded or 10 years from when it was recorded, because these messages are timeless, and yes, they are meant for you. So until next time, apples and tomatoes, all the things. Thank you again so much for listening, walking with me. Don't forget to follow me all over social media. I am Marissa Moments. And as a reminder, it is Marissa with one S, because as I always like to say, there is only one me. So until next time, happy healing. Thank you for listening, and bye.